Hey everyone, welcome to our creative entrepreneurship series. So happy to have you here. We're doing a series of interviews with other creative entrepreneurs who are creative writers helping other creative writers. A little bit about me. As I said, I'm Beth Barany. I am an award-winning science fiction and fantasy author, and I run a business helping other science fiction and fantasy writers go from idea to publication with confidence, pizzazz, and bringing out their unique voice. And now, as a coach and along with Gala, we are helping creative writers who want to build their thriving and profitable businesses serving other creatives so they can share their expertise with confidence while making a living doing what they love. So that's my intro. Gala, off to you.
Hi, I'm Gala Russ, and I started in the creative writing world as a romance author. I have almost 10 books published. I'm going to have to count at some point. I published them as Willa Drew with my co-author. And then I decided that I wanted to resurrect my teaching credentials, not credentials, but I used to be a teacher and a foreign language teacher. And I decided that now that I've learned so much, I want to share the knowledge about the creative writing and also the former project manager, the whole pre-pub process and publishing process, because it took me so much energy and mistakes, so many mistakes to figure it all out. So now I'm helping other people get it in an easier way and in the way that is most useful to them, because everybody's so different and the cookie cutter answers aren't always the fastest way to get you to the publication. And now I also am working with Beth on helping people who want to be creative entrepreneurs start their businesses. That's me. And today's guest is Savannah. And Savannah, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Savannah Gilbo. I'm a developmental editor, I'm a book coach, and I'm the host of the Fiction Writing Made Easy podcast, where you can go for all things writing, editing, and publishing fiction. And the reason I got started in this business, much like Beth and Gala said, is that I started learning about it and I wanted to share what I was learning in a way that was a little more straightforward, a little less confusing than some of the advice out there. I didn't like how there felt like there was this energy of almost gatekeeping in a way. Do you guys know what I mean by that? I didn't like that. So I wanted to start sharing information so that we could all write more books because that's what we all want. We love reading, we love books, and we should all be able to do that if we want to. So that's me in a nutshell.
Oh, so wonderful. Love it. So, Gala, you're going to ask the first question?
Yeah. First of all, I relate so much to removing the gatekeeping part. I started my IG Lives writing conversations for the same reason, because I feel like we have so many awesome conversations behind the closed doors in the different communities, but not everything makes it out. And whatever makes it out isn't always as in depth or as honest. So I have, again, today is part of that too. And first question, let's go to the question. The first question I have for you is, what services and products make up the core of your business right now? So what is your
Yeah.
business?
Well, you can probably guess from my intro that one of them is the podcast. So, the Fiction Writing Made Easy podcast, believe it or not, was born accidentally the week that everything shut down for COVID. I had been following kind of these other business gurus that were like, you need weekly content, you need weekly content. And as a self proclaimed introvert, I'm like, what can I do that's not like out in the world, the face of all the time? So I was like, I can start a podcast and start sharing my knowledge that way. So the podcast is kind of my free pillar. I put out weekly episodes that are 100% free, that are on all different kinds of topics. And then on the other side of my business, I have what makes up the core of how I make money, which is my notes to novel course. And what this is it's really just a structured, streamlined way to take people from idea to finished first draft and then beyond. So it's basically, I like to say it's my coaching process in a course and group container.
That is so wonderful.
You said the course and group container. So you basically have a community associated with it as well, where people can talk to each other.
Yeah, so twice a year we run the program live, and that comes with like 8 weeks of support and community. And then every time we're not doing that, people can join as like a self-study version of the program.
And do you use Facebook or special apps, or how do you run the community?
We have been using Facebook, but this time, so we're about to open the doors literally tomorrow. This time, we are going to run our community on Kajabi communities because that's where our course is hosted. And I use Kajabi as like a student of other courses, and I really like it. So I'm hopeful that this will kind of cure that Facebook feeling we're all having right now. We're like, none of us want to be on Facebook, but we'll see.
That's good.
Nice to know that you don't have to have everything figured out, and that also you can start in one place and then go to the other.
Totally.
Because I think with beginners, a lot of times I feel people want to be perfect and have that perfect software, and think you just need to start somewhere and then
1000%.
yeah.
Yeah. And I so relate to that. I'm a recovering perfectionist, I like to say. And I know we're going to get into this a little bit later, but if we wait till things are perfect and ready and we have everything figured out, then we are never going to get our businesses off the ground. So it's so important to be flexible and just kind of open to saying, this is version one. Because, I'm running my 7th season of my course. So the 7th time we've done the live cohort. And you better believe it has changed since day one. And even the podcast has changed and evolved since day one. So I feel like someone out there who's listening needs to hear that things can change.
And how do you change it? Because I feel today we talked to a lot of people who were saying, I'm listening to the needs of my community, and they tend to tell me, oh, I need more of this, I need more of that. How has your evolution been going? What were you
Yeah.
basing all the changes on?
Well, similar things, right? So some I used to work a lot with writers one-on-one. So in the beginning, I would change podcasts and I would change the course I was building based on what I was learning one-on-one. And now that I don't do one-on-one anymore, a lot of it's through the communities for my course that I'm involved in, or people giving me feedback on the podcast. Of course, as business owners, we can see stats behind things too. So, it's always, we have a few different types of episodes on the podcast, for example, and it's interesting to see that some that we think are really going to work really don't, or maybe some like we hear a lot about, but then we look at the numbers and we're like, that doesn't, it doesn't really match. So you kind of always have to be looking at the numbers and then open to doing what the numbers are suggesting or having a good reason why you don't want to. Like, for example, there's a certain type of episode we have that the numbers might not tell you it's the best type, but as a business owner, I really like them and I think they serve a purpose in my business. So, just balancing all that stuff. Business is a balancing act. Like everything we're going to talk about is like, just balance it. Just try it and balance it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's especially you have a feeling about it. Like
Yeah.
you enjoy it too. And
Yeah.
the stats don't always tell they don't tell the fullest story. They can
Right.
tell part of the story.
And this actually, I got into this the other week because I was using AI. I was using Claude AI to help me look at podcast stats. And if you just kind of look at what the numbers tell you, it might tell you to do something that you're like, no, I purposely put this in place for XYZ reason. Or in this case, for example, it was saying, these recent episodes weren't your best. And I'm like, but Claude, those have only been out for 30 days. Like you can't compare them to the whole catalog, so there's context and your goals and your desires in there as well.
That's right. There's an evergreen quality to a podcast that just looking at the stats, can't.
Yeah.
So this kind of segues us into the next question, which is which platform or marketing channel has helped you connect the most meaningfully with your intended audience?
Yeah. And I think people might be surprised by this. Well, they're going to be surprised by half of my answer. The one half of my answer that you won't be surprised with is the podcast. So obviously that is a huge way for me to get people in the door of my business and for me to connect with my audience and get them on my email list. But the other way that has been really strong for me since day one is Pinterest. And so what I have always done since before I had my podcast is I would blog and I would post my blog on Pinterest in, let's say 5 to 10 different versions of that pin. And that's just consistently bringing people into my business because it is evergreen. It lives out there forever. So I've always kept up with Pinterest. Now that I have a podcast, I do it pretty much the same way where the podcast episode gets a blog post and that gets a Pinterest post. So highly recommend. I know that as a writer myself, I'm on Pinterest all the time for various reasons. And we have a lot of writers, people who are trying to edit their book, come up with character ideas and things like that on Pinterest. So that's been the other really good one. And then, of course, building my email list is like number one priority all the time.
Yeah, that's fabulous. And what kind of fiction do you write?
I write fantasy. I don't have anything published in my fiction world yet. I have a nonfiction book published, but someday soon, I'm thinking.
Awesome. Yeah, I love science fiction and fantasy.
Me too.
So great. I want to just underscore, Pinterest is not a social media. Pinterest is more people go there for inspiration. There's images, obviously, it's image focused. And I've made character boards. I've made boards for specific books that I've published. And I've also gone on there to research things, clothing or whatever for my just as a research tool.
Yeah.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like a visual search engine.
that's fabulous. That's
And I think it's interesting too to note, and I don't know if you guys have heard this a lot today, but we didn't mention social media. That's not really part of my marketing strategy. Like, yes, I am on Instagram, but if you look at the hierarchy of what I do and what I do first, second, third, fourth, fifth, Instagram and social media is very low on the list just because it isn't something that drives a lot of traffic for me yet. Maybe that'll change, but I see a lot of people trying to build their business. They're like, I offered a freebie on Instagram. And you're like, okay, but you have 250 followers. And like, you need to do more than that sometimes to get your stuff out there. So just my 2 cents.
absolutely. No, I'm a big believer in social media acting as an amplifier.
Yes.
Really putting your home message on your website, on your blog, and then using just a few outlets that you like and can maintain, like you're maintaining Pinterest. And I was also wondering if you use YouTube, if your podcast is up on YouTube.
It is with no video. So right now it's kind of like I want to be on YouTube, but the easiest way for me to do it is just connect the RSS feed of my podcast to YouTube because I don't have bandwidth to do like any kind of other production. So for now, that's what it is. Maybe that'll change. But I like what you said about amplifying because to me, that's always the goal too, is like the goal is to get people on my email list. So how am I going to do that? Is it through the podcast, through Pinterest, through whatever else? And if you're using social media, how can you make that your goal? How can you always be getting people on your email list?
Absolutely. I think that if I had to underscore how I built my business, and I've been in business 19 years, it's have an email list. And
Yeah.
I started actually before my business was formalized. I started building an email list because I started teaching actually in person and
Wow.
and having here you guys. Yeah, I had a speaking gig at a conference, a New England Romance Writers of America conference before, like a year before I went formal in my business. 'Cause
That's amazing.
I had the teacher like Gala. I come from a teaching background. I taught English to non-native speakers, and it was natural as the first step. Just
I love that.
yeah, and design curriculum, and I had a unique perspective that yeah.
That's so
So
cool.
yeah, it's so fun. So Gala, you want to go ahead and ask our third question? Or
I have so many other follow-ups on what you were just talking about. I'm gonna briefly touch up on that, but I know also that we keep running out of time. So I'm gonna first reach out to Savannah separately, which seems to be the theme of this conversation. When Beth was talking about us doing this as short form, and I'm like, I am not your person. My Instagram lives go for an hour and we still can't stop talking. I'm like a very long form
I
conversation.
love it.
One thing that you mentioned was driving everything to your newsletter between the podcast and the Pinterest and the blog. How do you do you just list it or do you put some freebies or how do you drive your traffic from other places to your newsletter?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the very first year and probably the year and a half I did my podcast, I was putting out a freebie with every episode just to see what was going to stick. So if I did something like here are the conventions of the romance genre for an episode, then I would include a cheat sheet of those conventions. Or if I was talking about how to develop your character, the worksheet would be 5 character development questions or whatever. And so I just wanted to see kind of what would work. And that strategy worked really well. There were some that did better than the others, of course. But now that's evolved to I'm a little more clear on who my target audience is. I know what they want. I know what roadblocks they're dealing with. I know what kind of things they like to consume. So it's a little more targeted and less like throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. But yeah, offering freebies, offering I even do lately, I've started doing this thing where I say, like, send me your email and I'll send you, because I know you're writing romance, I'll send you 5 of my best episodes for romance writers or something like that. So it's always just think about how can you give value to get that email address because our inboxes are pretty sacred space. We're not just going to, I mean, unless you're telling great stories in your emails or something, it's hard for us to just hand over our email address. So usually trading it for a gift.
Yeah, it's cool to incorporate because I agree again with Beth and with you that newsletter building is it.
Yeah.
I still am exploring all of the avenues And I wanted to piggyback on Pinterest for my author stuff. I haven't done it for any book coaching, but for my author stuff, we also post everything on Pinterest. And it is very interesting because it is evergreen and because things that were posted there 6 months ago then suddenly start trending or like
Yeah.
happening. And you're like, why is this book actually getting reads? I did nothing for it. And you're like, oh, it's a
Pinterest.
post that somehow got picked up randomly from, 7 months
Yeah.
ago.
And it's so funny on that note, like, because we talked earlier about how you're not gonna get everything perfect. Every now and then I'll see, like, one of the first Pinterest graphics I ever made come back around, and I'm like, "Oh my god, that's so embarrassing," but it worked back then, and it's still working now, so it's not the end of the world if things aren't perfect.
Right. And you kind of, and adjacent to that is that we don't really know what other people want until, right, something happens. And so something we might think is so might be the exact right thing that they need. And
Yeah.
another vote in like just put it out there. And I mean, I would say I'm a recovering perfectionist as well, and find the hardest phase of my own fiction writing is finishing and releasing a book.
Yeah.
Hardest phase. But I've done it so many times. I'm working on my, like, 16th novel now, and the 13th I'll be publishing, and it's like, "Yes, this is the hardest phase, and you've done it many times."
And you'll survive. Yep.
Survive, exactly. I'll survive, you'll survive, Beth. And friends remind me, critique partners remind me, "So how did you do it before?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Why did I do it before?"
You're,
Yeah.
like, pretty much the same way. I white knuckled my way through it.
Well, I did it step by step. I mean, I felt the fear, but I didn't push myself. That's the other thing I think.
Yes.
Then maybe that relates actually to our next question. Gal, are you asking this question over again?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I'm like, yes, I'm starting a fantasy novel right now. And I'm like, how did I write all of those things when I didn't know anything? I feel like I know nothing. And oh my God, maybe I should just not do this. So, anyways, but we had a third question for you that is, what would you say to someone who feels called to creative entrepreneurship, but does not feel that they're ready yet?
Yeah. I think the call to creative entrepreneurship is something that should like 1000% be honored. So follow that and just know that even when you look at other people who have established businesses like any of us on this call, we were never ready. I mean, you guys probably agree that we never felt ready. And I would say like don't do what I did because I thought I was going to feel ready someday and I would even like my course curriculum, I had it already, and then I, like, waited and waited and waited to put it out because I kept thinking things would, suddenly the clouds would part and I would just see the truth and the best thing ever would come to me, but it never did. So I waited so long to do things sometimes that I would get anxiety and I would look at my business bank account, like, dwindling, and it's like you have to choose what kind of discomfort do you wanna feel? Do you wanna feel the discomfort of I'm waiting until I feel ready because it feels messy and I'm going to stumble and make mistakes? Or do you want to feel the discomfort that I felt, which is watching your bank account dwindle and getting panic attacks and like feeling like you're not cut out to do this because you're not taking action and proving to yourself that you can? So it's a fine line to walk. And I like what you said, Beth, about like also having compassion for yourself because we're not saying just like throw out your personality and go nuts. Honor how your energy levels, how you show up. Like for me, for example, I'm a big introvert and I know I need downtime to recharge. So like when I do something that's a little more extroverting, like today I have calls all day. So you bet I'm going to take a nap at the end of the day. But honor yourself, honor your energy, honor the call to be a creative entrepreneur, and then take the step forward in courage because you're never just going to wake up with confidence or wake up feeling ready. It's never going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. I was actually around 28 years old working in San Francisco. I lived in Oakland or Berkeley, and I was like, what is the difference between me, this little first time in a corporate job, and all those other people? I'm just as smart as them, but they
Right.
seem so confident. Where does confidence come from? And I realized it was almost like walking through a threshold, like walking across a door. It's like, well, I have confidence over here. It's like I was keying into the areas in which I did have confidence. Maybe I didn't have
Yeah.
much life experience or work experience as they did, but I could like maybe put on confidence like the way I would put on my clothes to go to work and it be a uniform that I could like walk around in. So even though it didn't quite fit exactly right, I wasn't super comfortable wearing those, well, pantyhose, forget pantyhose, but just like getting up and ready and out the door. It's like, well, I can do that, but I guess I just have to put one foot in front of the other to develop the confidence, because that's really the only way we're going to get it
Yeah.
is through life experience and taking small steps. I actually didn't start my business like full stop. I actually gave my boss 6 months notice, and I took baby steps, and I even launched the first class while I was technically still employed, while I was training my replacement. But I gave myself a window of time in which to walk into it. And I like walking.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering for you, like, what was the switch? Was there something that happened? Did you go, well, I guess I need to start because I could never start, or I could start, like,
Yeah. So a couple things in your story just reminded me, I did something similar. I worked in a corporate job for a long time in a totally unrelated industry. And I remember there was a day where I was just like, you know what? Like, I cannot imagine doing this or something similar for like 5 years down the road. I just couldn't imagine it. And so I did something similar. I saved up some money. I kind of cut back on spending. I told my boss ahead of time, like, in 6 months from now, I'm not going to be here. And it's so funny you said 6 months because that was me too. And it would help the whole thing just feel a little easier, and then I could kinda start. I also had PTO built up, so I started using some of that, and I talked to my boss, like, "I'm gonna use some of this when it's okay and start working on my own business." And so, I know not everyone's gonna be in a position that has a nice boss and that can do things like that, but if you can, totally do it. And then, yeah, I just remember, it started to get so uncomfortable once I was gone from my corporate job and I wasn't actually putting myself out there. I was waiting to feel ready. It started being so uncomfortable that I was like, look, you're either going to go back to a corporate job, which you really don't want to do, which is almost kind of sucking the soul out of your body, or you're going to figure this out. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to figure it out. Like, why can't I? I figured out other things. And it was hard. Like you said, it's walking into something that feels uncomfortable. But another thing I did that might help somebody is I started offering like chapter feedback for free just so I could see, like, are people resonating with what I'm telling them? And, I started really reading and deconstructing stories just so I had a vocabulary to help people. So that's another great thing you can do because I think you'll be surprised. And I was surprised when people come back and they're like, that's exactly what was missing, or thank you, this highlighted something for me. And it's like, okay, I can do this. So I think there's a lot of ways to build confidence even if you don't feel it.
yeah, and giving yourself the opportunity to practice in a safe
Yeah.
way. That's really
Yeah.
I feel like we could totally keep talking. It's such a juicy topic.
Totally.
People are, like, trying to navigate that edge of around confidence, around starting. So we'll have to continue this conversation another time, but I just wanna thank you, Savannah, for taking the time out of your day to come
Thank you
and
guys.
help other creative entrepreneurs. That's so awesome. So thank you so
Thank you
much.
guys. Thanks for having me, and
Absolutely.
good luck to everyone who's watching. If you don't believe in yourselves yet, then borrow our us three's belief in you, and just take a step, even if it's small, because you can do it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, you can do it.
Thank you.